Greetings, America. This is the day before the election. Thank you. Day before the election, and I hope everyone is making the proper choice and voting for Donald Trump. Because Joe Biden, regardless of what he says he's going to do for America, is lying his butt off. He says the hourly wages are going to go up by about $14,000 a year. Wrong. He can't. He knows that if Congress won't go for closing the loopholes on these businesses and the wealthy, because those are the ones who got those people in Congress to begin with. They are the ones who donate millions of dollars to their campaign funds. They're not going to want to anger them by voting to increase their taxes and saying it's on no one under $400,000 a year. That's ridiculous, because the taxes, everything he says he wants to do is going to raise everybody's taxes, everyone's income tax. You can't get a $15,000 tax credit for buying a house. That's what he's saying he's going to do. They're going to get $15,000 credit for buying a house. No one's ever gotten that. He hasn't said how it's going to be paid for. He's haranguing Donald Trump for saying he sent jobs overseas. Donald Trump has brought jobs back from overseas. He got us he threw out the NAFTA and got a new trade deal with Canada and Mexico. He has issued an executive order to dealing with prescription drugs. And if you had watched the communist news network called CNN, or also you can call it the criminal news network, if you had done that, you would have seen that they had jumped all over him about that. It was said that he gave them pharmaceutical companies time to deal with it before he issued the order, and they didn't. Yeah. Talk about sending jobs overseas. That only happens when taxes are increased. So Joe Biden is saying that's exactly what he's looking to do, is to increase the taxes on these companies and they'll send the jobs overseas to other countries where the taxes there are lower. That's ridiculous. People talk about, and he's talking about getting a hold of this virus. Well, if they could have got a hold of the virus, they would have by now. These so-called scientists are dragging their feet on getting a vaccine. They keep saying, first they said they would have a vaccine. They thought they have a vaccine by the end of October. Now it's the end of November. Now they're saying it's the end of November. They expect to have one. Um, they've got two trials stalled because they're investigating uh, reactions among some of the participants, and uh, they've he's talking about this is not who we are. Well, shoot, nobody knows who we are. You look at our um, you look at the history of this of life in this nation. Look at count how many Native American tribes there were before they supposedly settled the West, settled the plains area, settled everything west of uh, the Mississippi. You know, before before and after the war, all the states were east of the was Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. They were east of those. Then you had in the Ohio River Valley. Then you had the state of Ohio and other countries, other states. They came to be, but that was still widely considered frontier, uncivilized territory. And hey, think about it. See, in the is it the Delaware River area? They had this band of natives called the Mohawk Indians. Um, they don't exist anymore, and so that was wiped out. Then they took care of. Then as we moved west, we they dealt a blow to all the other tribes out there. Uh, they had a bad record. They would, when they moved west, they would move the natives off off land that they had lived on for thousands of years, that their people had lived on for thousands of years. And they did so by when he put them on it's called the March of Tears. It's not because they were crying all the time. Well, the women were, but it was because of all the people that they were losing along the way. They lost them not because of the march, just because of the march. They lost them because when it got cold, when they needed blankets, the army would give them blankets that were infested with smallpox. Like Joe Biden's like, oh, that's not who we are. The way talking about the the things that are going on here. Well, this is nothing compared to what they did to the natives in the 19th century. Yeah. They made treaties with them, and then they broke them one after the other. They made a treaty with the natives. They would give up claim to all the land that their people had lived on for thousands of years, on the condition that that the government leave the Black Hills alone. What happens? Somebody supposedly finds gold in that area. All bets are off. The treaty goes out the window. Hiram Ulysses Grant, better known as Ulysses Simpson Grant, sends the army under the command of Philip Sheridan. He's quite a piece of work. Burned the Shenandoah Valley during the Civil War. Philip Sheridan, he sends George Custer, who has been demoted from lieutenant general to lieutenant colonel. That's a hell of a drop. Down 3 ranks. Actually 4. He's down 4 ranks. He demoted him to lieutenant colonel, put him in charge of the 2nd battalion of the 7th Cavalry. Sends him to deal with the natives, the Plains Indians, and just to show you how bad their intel was. He told Custer, he estimated, when Custer asked what the enemy's numbers were, how many he'd be facing, told him, you estimate no more than a couple hundred. They ended up facing 2,500 natives, a force of 267 cavalry, facing a group of 12 or 20, between 1 and 2 dozen tribes, totaling 2,500 native warriors. And natives ended up having them outgunned. And they took out all of Custer's 5 troops. 5 troops, and took on Benteen and Reno's 5 troops. One of them had 3 and the other had 2. And Custer had 5. They keep claiming, that if he'd taken this thing taken certain things with him, he might have come out better. I doubt it. No. Yeah. And it wasn't just, they marched the natives from what is now New Mexico all the way to Florida. And then they put them on a reservation there. And then they marched them from Florida to another place, I think at Oklahoma. They did that. Yeah. And this country's history is just ridiculous. Our government has not been able to follow this Constitution at all. The part where it says the reason they have a vice president is so that when the president dies, the vice president or the purpose of having a vice president, is that when the president dies, the vice president will step in. That's what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to step in until a new president could be elected. But they didn't do that. When William Henry Harrison died in 1841, John Tyler stepped in and he served out all of William Henry Harrison's 4-year term. And that was it. He was done. After that, it stuck. Then the president died. The vice president stepped in, served out the full term, or what was left of his term, and was elected to one of his own. If it's less than 2 years, then he'll be elected to he can serve out that and serve 2 of his own. If it's more than 2 years, then the vice president will serve it out, and it could be only serve 1 more year, 1 more term. Congress has been very quick to say what the responsibilities the president has. After FDR, they even stepped in and said, "Oh, nobody can serve more than 2 consecutive terms," but they have always balked at putting a limit on how many terms a person can serve as in Congress. We have always had a good immigration policy. You come here legally and you can work your butt off and try to make something of yourself. They had Ellis Island that worked for a long time. Millions of people came through Ellis Island, and many of them went on to make something of themselves or not. They spread out across the nation. Many of them, like Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller, and there were others. They created the oil conglomerates, the steel conglomerate, the railroad, across this nation. They got into shipping and like that. They even created the camera industry, photography. These were all immigrants. They say this is a land of immigrants. Yes and no. A lot of our forefathers, our ancestors did come here as immigrants, and then they had the rest of after that. Their descendants were natural born citizens. So you can only your parents were immigrants. If you can find if your parents were Native Americans, you're not an immigrant. All those from Africa and from Europe, they were immigrants. But it's only the first generation that, only those who came here from another country are immigrants. I have no problem with anybody coming here to wanting to live, but only if they come here legally. Those who cross the border in violation of our laws, they don't have any rights. They are criminals. They are criminals. They are invaders. In my mind, if you cross the border in violation of our immigration laws, you have not just committed a crime, you have committed an act of war. And doubly, if you brought children with you, you've committed you've committed a crime against humanity. Donald Trump has been harangued his entire term trying to secure our borders. And all he has gotten is grief from the news networks, from Congress, from the American people, from everybody. And he does not deserve it. He deserves respect. They call him a racist. He has never said a racist thing ever. He is not and you hear some women claiming he is a misogynist, claiming he displays misogyny, or he is misogynistic. Those are the racists. Those are the sexists. Those are the ones who deserve to be labeled with these terms, that they are anti-male. Whatever Latin is for anti-male, the anti-male version of being of misogyny, the anti-male version of misogynist and misogynistic. That's what they are. They are discriminators of the highest order. People in Congress need to learn that they serve the American people. The court system needs to learn that it serves the American people. The rule of law is not what the court system says it is. It is not what the Congress says it is. You cannot give the female gender more protections from males than you give them, and cannot give them all the protections from males and give male no protection from the female. Here I'm talking about how the Civil War was a war to protect the Union. That's wrong. It was not a war to protect the Union. Abraham Lincoln is not honest. He was a liar. on many levels. Maybe he was a good wrestler. Nobody knows. Because unless you can find independent corroboration that what is claimed happened, happened. It's Abraham Lincoln did not want the slaves here. He wanted to send them back to Africa. Abraham Lincoln, sure, he might have wanted to free them, but he wanted them sent back to Africa. People in the North did not want the slaves here. They too wanted them sent back to Africa. Abraham Lincoln could have found a way to free them, could have paid the southern slave owners for every slave, sent them back to Africa, and then helped the South find a way to maintain their economy in a better way through technology. But they did not. The government chose war. When Abraham Lincoln and the South did not declare war on the Union. The Union declared war on the South. That's a fact. When South Carolina, the southern states did not secede en masse. It was not until after Abraham Lincoln declared that a rebellion against the lawful authority of the Union was at hand and he declared war on South Carolina, that all these other states seceded. South Carolina seceded from the Union and demanded that declared that all federal property would now be returned to the custodianship of South Carolina. All Union commanders in the boundaries of South Carolina conceded. They handed over the posts and the arms and the armories, all except one commander, Robert Anderson. He unlawfully abandoned his post and snuck his garrison he spirited them away to the island fortress in Charleston Harbor. We know it as Fort Sumter. And they took up residence in there. When South Carolina communicated to Washington that they wanted Lincoln to remove Anderson and the garrison, and Lincoln replied to them that As soon as their supplies ran out, he would remove them. He estimated their supplies to last no more than 2 weeks and a fortnight. Once he sent that communication, he then turned around and ordered that ships be readied with men and supplies to be sent to Fort Sumter. There they would reinforce the garrison and resupply it indefinitely. Once South Carolina, once the government at Charlottesville, or once the government in Charleston learned of this, they gave orders that the fort was to be bombarded. General Pierre Gustave Thomas Beauregard was given the order to fire on the fort. He did so at approximately 12 noon, April 12th, 1861. The bombardment ended April 14th at approximately 10 a.m. If my recollection is correct. 10 a.m., April 14th, 1861, was when it ended with the surrender of Major Robert Anderson and the full garrison at that fort. And that is what they consider to be the start of the Civil War. They only fired on the fort because of Lincoln's duplicitousness. Had he removed them when it was requested, it would not have been fired on because there would have been no need. But no, he decided to force the issue. Further, he went further by sidestepping Congress and calling for 75,000 volunteers to put down a rebellion, which there was none. No rebellion. And if you want to consider it a rebellion, it was one of his own making. Lincoln had no authority to call for the raising of 75,000 volunteers because to raise such a number was the equivalent of raising an army. Cannot raise an army of that size without the permission of Congress. Throughout the war, Congress they call these Confederate soldiers traitors. They were not traitors. Every state had declared its intention to leave the Union, which is every state's right. If this is a union, then every state has entered such voluntarily. You enter a union voluntarily, and you can leave a union voluntarily. Every state, when they ratified the Constitution, it took 9 of the 13 original states original colonies. And they did. 9 of them ratified it. They ratified the Bill of Rights. And thus, the United States became fact. When a state ratifies the Constitution, it is required to ratify the Bill of Rights as well. And it ratifies the Bill of Rights. When ratifying it, it makes those 10 amendments incumbent upon that state. Just because we have the 14th Amendment later on doesn't, it just reinforces the thing. Because you can't say that it's only incumbent upon the federal government if it's not incumbent upon the states. You don't have a federal government unless you have the states to make it. So, the 10 amendments are law of the land. That means they are incumbent on all 50 states and Washington, D.C. What else? Yeah. They left those states left the Union voluntarily, just as they entered voluntarily. The people in those states voted to become a state, and then their legislature and the people voted to petition for entry into the Union. So, as such, they had every right to leave. Lincoln forced Congress to admit Nevada as a state in 1864 because he was afraid he was going to lose the election if he didn't have the electors for Nevada. So when he pushed for the inclusion of Nevada into the Union, when Nevada had 39,600 population. So not a good guy. This nation has, when a person enters the presidency, they get all of the problems that have been created by the previous administrations. So the president, the person who's the president, has to not only try to do what they feel is best for the nation, for those who elected them, but they also have to try to unscrew, if you will, what those who have come before them have possibly screwed up. You know, our current situation with the nuclear weapons, that is given to us from FDR and his vice president, um, Harry S. Truman. Truman didn't have to drop the bomb. He had other options. That was unnecessary of him. Also, it is a fact, while FDR did create Social Security, he did so to divert attention from the fact that he had allowed MacArthur to send troops against World War I veterans who, in the midst of the Great Depression, were demanding payment of bonuses, which it is claimed were not due for another 12 years. But that's ridiculous. Why would bonuses be promised in 1918 that they weren't willing to pay for 27 years? Answer me that. Also, other things to divert attention from the fact that MacArthur had ordered the wholesale slaughter of cavalry mounts, horses. They had horses that they couldn't use anymore. Now that things were becoming mechanized, they couldn't use horses on the battlefield anymore. So instead of, selling them to the people or just releasing them onto the plains to fend for themselves, or maybe selling them to other nations, people of other nations, MacArthur decided to just kill them. That was ridiculous. Somehow MacArthur managed to avoid being convicted of incompetence and dereliction of duty and other things to after his garrison was attacked on the Philippines. That was a farce. The whole thing was ridiculous. our government has been incompetent pretty much from the get-go. They said they wanted to create a government different than the one they had just gotten their independence from. They created one exactly like it. Yes, they did. Our legislature is the same as what they have in England. We have an upper house. Our Senate is the same as the English House of Lords. We have a lower house. Check it. American House of Representatives is the same as the English House of Commons. We have an executive branch. In England, that's called our president. We have a president in England. They have a prime minister. The prime minister cannot. The prime minister is basically a figurehead. The prime minister can submit legislation, but cannot make laws on his own or her own. The prime minister can issue executive orders, but that's it. And the prime minister has no authority. The prime minister has no authority over the treasury. Now, unlike England, we do not have a monarchy, but England does. Now, the monarchy in England it's the face of the nation, and that's it. California talked about making reparations for slavery. What the heck are they talking about? Making reparations for slavery. They don't owe them anything. They don't have slaves. But if we were going to make reparations for slavery, then the whole world would have to pay into that, because slavery was everywhere. That's a fact. And when slavery in America was going on, England had ended slavery in their own nation, like just a few years before it took over in America. But they didn't do anything to end it here while we were still their colonies. Go figure. What else? You have, see, back to Joe Biden. Oh yeah, Biden is just an idiot. He has been in the government for close to 6 decades. He spent most of that time in Congress. If he had wanted to do any of the stuff that he is now talking about, talking, well, the first thing I'm going to do when I get into office is this and that. If he'd been interested in doing any of that stuff, why didn't he do it when he was in Congress? He didn't do anything. They claim he oversaw the economic recovery. I don't think so. That's ridiculous. He uh, in Congress, he gave us NAFTA. He gave us a lot of restrictive gun control laws. Oh, and that's another thing. Congress commits a lot of acts of treason. When you look at the Bill of Rights. When you look at the Bill of Rights, they don't exist for Congress or the courts to say, oh, people can't do this, people can't do that. That's not for them to say. See, Congress didn't give us these rights, so Congress can't take them away. These are guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States of America. And they exist to protect the American people against tyranny of government, and they exist to provide us with the ability to stop government from trampling our rights. In fact, our Bill of Rights is the same as the English Bill of Rights that was created when King John in 1215 was forced to sign the Magna Carta on June 15th, 1215. Yeah. When he was forced to sign that, he also got the English people also stripped the government of its belief of absolute authority. The government does not have absolute authority. The people do. The people have the absolute authority over their servants. And make no mistake, that's exactly what they are. Lincoln, the liar that I spoke of earlier, he said something that is true. This is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The people create the government, and people constitute the government. The people inhabit the government, Without people, you have no government. You have a lot of buildings, but you don't have government. The people are the government. The government is the people. People are the state. The state is the people. When we forget that, then everything is lost. The only way to maintain our independence is to understand that government and the state is an independent uh the government is an inanimate object that is only brought to life by human beings. Those we those who are elected to be our representatives, those we uh, elect to determine to make decisions for us, they are our servants. They serve us. We, the people, do not serve them. So we need to make it known to Joe Biden and his ilk, like Nancy Pelosi, Charles Schumer, Joseph Lieberman, Frank Lautenberger, Dianne Feinstein, Carolyn Murphy, and every other one of those freaks in the Democratic Party who are decidedly opposed to the Second Amendment and the entire Bill of Rights. We need to make it known they serve us. We do not serve them. And as far as term limits go, sooner rather than later, those term limits must be as such. If the president can only serve 2 consecutive terms, then Congress can serve no more than what the president can serve. That means if the president is in for 8 years, then that means Congress can only serve for 8 years. That means the court can only serve for 8 years, not for life. Anyone who votes for Joseph Biden is a traitor to the United States. They betray the Bill of Rights and everything that America stands for. If you think that the news is all trustworthy, you are an idiot. The news got us into the Spanish-American War in 1898. They also created other They've also created other problems throughout our history. So you need to read your history books and remember that history is written by the winners. Uh, Joe Biden cannot do any of the junk that he said he was going to do. He cannot increase your Social Security by $1,300 each year because that is money we pay into a Social Security fund. Congress is known to have embezzled about $3 trillion. Anyone who dies before they can draw from that fund, that money does not go to their relatives. It goes into the general fund, and Congress spends it. That money should not go into the general fund. Should either go back to the person's relatives, or it should go into the general Social Security fund to like increase in uh, burials. So the back to the relatives or toward burials. The as stated, so the Federal Elections Commission is a farce. It is known to be half Democrat, half Republican. And as such, it is done that way because the chair of the committee that oversees the commission has made it that way purposely to make the commission unable to get anything done. It has 6 members, 3 Republican, 3 Democrat. So they can't get anything done. It's just ridiculous. If you watch the television show that used to be on True TV, it's called Adam Ruins Everything. Or go to True TV, or go to Adam Ruins Everything /TrueTV.com. You will get a full list. They claim they'll get a full list of all of their sources for each episode. And it shows you a lot. It's a good show. Joe Biden he can't increase your Social Security. He's not gonna be able to get you hourly workers an increase of $14,000 or $15,000 each year from their pay. He's not going to be able to give uh, home buyers a $15,000 credit. He's not going to be able to give you, what is it, like $1,500 increase for your health care. He's not going to give like $7,000 for increase or credit for child care. And he damn sure not going to be able to get a handle on this virus. If they could have done that, it would have been done already. Regardless of what they claim about how Donald Trump's been handling the coronavirus, he hasn't been handling it. These so-called health experts have been mishandling it. Man, they aren't experts in any way, shape, or form. That's why it's called practicing. They practice medicine because they are not experts. They don't, they're not experts at it. They're not master physicians. Nothing. It's called practicing. You practice law, you practice medicine, you practice science, you practice everything because practice makes perfect. You can spend your life practicing something because you're not going to be perfect at it. You're going to make mistakes. So give it a rest. Elect Donald Trump to 4 more years. We need, because he has done good stuff for the economy. He has gotten us jobs back, and we need him to secure our borders. Joe Biden is an idiot. He's also responsible for our problems, for the problems we have with China. He said that China could not become our competitor. They're our biggest competitor. He said that they wouldn't be our problem. They're our biggest problem. They have the next biggest economy. So yes, they are our problem. And we also have a problem with them we also have a problem with them giving us this virus. When Donald Trump found out that the virus came from China, he shut down, he put a halt to travel to and from China. And his thanks was to be called a xenophobe. When he put a ban on travel to the United States from Muslim countries, he was called a racist. That idiot Bob Ferguson, who knows nothing about the Constitution, claimed that Donald Trump was doing it, or that he couldn't do it because it violated the First Amendment to the Constitution, which is ridiculous. And then the governor of Washington State claims got on board with him, supporting it, and others did too. They know nothing about it. And these judges, these idiot judges that claimed, that shut him down, saying that it was too ambiguous. No, it wasn't. He shut it down for 90 days to make sure that these people who wanted to come here could be better vetted. If they had jumped on those people who brought down the World Trade Center by going after them when they dropped out of school, when they came here as student visas, when they dropped out of school, if they had gone after them and started hunting them down, if they had flagged their photos and all that, that would have been a good step, because then they would not have been able to train as pilots. They wouldn't have been able to train to fly aircraft. Which is how they were able to take over those planes. The so-called intelligence community dropped the ball. They say, oh, now it's better. No, it's not. Because these idiots still don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't. If they shared intel, shared information with each other, that would be a good step. If they had credible sources and accurate information, that would be a good step. They told George W. Bush when he was in office that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. After they took down Saddam, they found out that wasn't true. And yet the Democrats are still taking the word of these idiots, these unintelligent idiots, when they say something. It's ridiculous. Listen, there's a phrase that everyone needs to heed. It goes, you can please all of the people some of the time. You can please some of the people all of the time, but you cannot please all of the people all of the time. Which means that at some point, somebody is going to be pissed off about something. That's inevitable. Remember, 1933, FDR confiscated the gold from private ownership. That wasn't legal because the government cannot steal what it doesn't own. They can't tell American people that they can't own gold or silver. But he did, and the people just went along with it. People are sheep. The Supreme Court upheld it. They also upheld the 18th Amendment, which ruled that, which was a farce to begin with, because it said the manufacture, sale, transportation, and distribution of alcoholic beverages is outlawed. Well, that was ridiculous because you have all of that alcohol, all these alcoholic beverages, they had been been created up to that point. So they just pour it down into the sewers. That's wrong. Can't do that. Because of it, they damn near bankrupted the city. Or the city, they bankrupted the nation. And they allowed J. Edgar Hoover to build the FBI into the powerful force it is now. That is wrong. The FBI is worldwide. It's wrong. It is not a worldwide force. I mean, that's what you got Interpol for. The FBI is not Interpol. The United States is becoming like Rome.
You want any snacks?
What you got?
Want me to grab something for you?
It's becoming like the Roman state. We are basically all over the known world, yet we're all over, but we don't control it. Yet people, it's said that everybody looks to us for what to do.
Yeah.
That's fine.
You want that Coke or anything?
A regular Coke.
Regular Coke? Okay. I'll put it right here.
Thank you. We need to just remember just because we're all over the world, but these nations do not answer to us. We answer to them. We answer to the international community. We need to remember the government answers to us. So we need to start enforcing our will. We also need to remember that while the government answers to us, we also need to answer to each other. Now, just remember, the American females do not have absolute authority over males. And it's idea that I heard somebody say it once, that the idea that a woman has the authority to have an abortion without the man's say so, that's bull. She does not get pregnant without him. She becomes pregnant, she needs to ask him first. Maybe he wants the baby, maybe he don't. But he needs to get first crack at whatever happens with that child. And that is a child, regardless of what anybody else thinks. If he wants a child but she don't, she should have the child and then sign her rights away and terminate them immediately, and put some in there that it's effective immediately with no grace period, nothing later on. And then he can go off and raise the child. And if he doesn't want the child, but she does, he can do the same thing. She does not have the right to hold him hostage and force him to pay millions of dollars in child support to a child that he had no say in creating. If he didn't know that she wasn't on the pill, that's on her. If he didn't know that she was pregnant, that's on her. You know, there has to be communication. Too much of this stuff, females cause too much problem. You know, it's not just him. He can't read her like an open book. It's a known fact that females do not communicate. They expect males to know what they're thinking. Well, that's ridiculous because, as we all know, even the female does not know what she is thinking. She doesn't know what she is thinking or feeling. So how can he know the same thing? That's ridiculous. So, I'm just you can learn a lot by watching television. These shows, they say it's all fictional, but it comes from real life. Things happen. They put them in the show. You know, the situation that they're talking about. You know, the characters are fictional, but the situations often happen in reality. So it's not just a one-way street. Third law of physics says for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And if you want to flip it around, then it can also be for every cause there is an effect. For every cause there is an effect. You know, you have a stick of dynamite, it's not going to go off unless you put a fuse in it. You have nitroglycerin, it's not going to go off unless it's dropped or something else happens to set it off. Nothing happens without a cause, without a corresponding action. You know, so there's always something. It's just, remember that, people. Remember that. There is always a cause for something. We need Donald Trump. We need Donald Trump for another 4 years. So I hope you will Just remember what I've said. I know it's been rambling, but it all means something. Just remember that Joe Biden, to be specific, Joe Biden is not the guy he purports himself to be. He spent nearly 50 and 60 years in Congress doing nothing except passing uh, damaging gun control laws. That is treason. Dang, my nose itches. Pass damaging gun control laws. Lyndon Johnson signed into law the Gun Control Act of 1968, which gave us all the problems we have today. And according to C-SPAN, when they caught him on camera lying, claiming that his IQ was higher than the guy he was talking to, that he had graduated from college at the top of his class with 3 degrees. Now later he had to he confessed that he had not graduated at the top of his class. He had graduated at the bottom, but he had barely graduated. That he hadn't graduated with 3 degrees. He graduated with 1. So what does that say about him? And then at that, he's spending nearly 50 years in Congress passing damaging gun control laws. You can't believe him. He spends 8 years as Barack Obama's vice president, and he's together. You have the Benghazi debacle. You have we got NAFTA in there. It's just redundant. They pass all these laws supporting these illegal immigrants. That's wrong. We need to support America. We need to support Donald Trump. And we need to get people in that government and in our courts that are going to serve us the way we deserve to be served. Thank you for now.